Hi, welcome to Silent Thoughts. I'm your host, Abby Van Aken. And again, the whole purpose of this podcast is to create a platform where individuals can feel comfortable talking about controversial topics. So last week we had the opportunity to have a licensed social worker, and he gave a lot of insight as a therapist on the controversy of men speaking out regarding their emotions. In this week's episode, we will dive into the controversial topic of the government shutting down, occurring October 1st, 2023. I will be discussing what is a government shutdown, the reason for a government shutdown, who is affected, what is the impact of government shutdowns, and how do we prevent this from happening again? Or is this a common thing that will happen again in the future? Also, throughout this episode, I will be including a couple different audio recordings of videos that I have found. So I'm doing something a little different this time. I plan on doing an audio recording for this episode, and the reason for that is for the last 3 episodes, I have done video recordings where I bring in someone as an interview and I have a video recording of my episode. However, this time I want to do an audio recording to try to change up the perspective, and for those who are driving to work or driving to an appointment or school, you're able to play it over your radio or your intercom system, and you can listen at ease without the concern or worry that you are going to be getting in an accident, or I don't have to have that little thing in the back of my conscience that you guys are watching my video while you're driving. So enjoy, and let's get this started. So to begin with, what is a government shutdown? A government shutdown occurs when there is an amount of funding that goes toward a government agency. What is a government shutdown? A government shutdown occurs when the amount of funding that goes toward government agencies or programs cannot be agreed upon during the creation of a budget or the development of a bill to fund all these necessary government operations. So, if the government cannot agree on the budget, then they go into a shutdown until it all is resolved. So, what is the reason for this lockdown that just happened? So what is the reason for this shutdown that is occurring as of October 1st? So today is September 30th, 2023. However, currently I am mentally preparing for the government shutdown that will be occurring tomorrow, October 1st, 2023. Throughout time, it has been stated in the CBS News that since 1980, the United States has experienced 14 different shutdowns. The most recent shutdown was in 2018 to 2019, while under the Trump administration. It is stated on Wikipedia that through the 35-day shutdown, approximately 380,000 employees were furloughed, and the shutdown costs the government approximately almost $5 billion. It appears that this shutdown is because our Congress cannot agree on the amount of budget per fiscal year.
Shutdown bill will help for now, but federal lawmakers have just 2 weeks to fund a new budget or agree to push the deadline back. Right now, neither looks likely, meaning the government could shut down. Well, Seven's on your side with what that could mean for your family and how you can prepare for it. Here's the good news. If the shutdown is short, most people won't feel much of an impact. Essential services like the post office will keep running, and any furloughed employees will receive retroactive pay. But even a short shutdown could delay some of your plans.
If you're dealing with the government for some reason, you need your passport renewed, you have friends that are applying for citizenship status, you have questions with your IRS refund or about your taxes, you're planning to go visit a national park, all of those things could be impacted because the people that are in charge of dealing with those things won't be on the job.
Social Security checks and Medicare benefits will still go out, though some processes like benefit verification or replacement Medicare cards could be stalled. But if the shutdown goes on long enough, we could start to see bigger impacts. SNAP will still be funded, but some food stamp benefits may not be sent out. Essential government workers, such as first responders, may no longer be able to work without pay. We saw this in 2018 when a lack of TSA agents and air traffic controllers caused flight delays and terminal closures.
if the shutdown goes for more than a few days, it could end up impacting the economy significantly. It could affect the nation's credit rating. That means that there's going to be lost productivity, lost buying power, and that could end up impacting all of us as well.
If a government shutdown could impact you financially, now might be a good time to reevaluate your budget, put off any major purchases, and build up your emergency fund. If you miss a paycheck and can't pay your bills, insurance company USAA recommends contacting your financial companies. Ask if there are any payment extension programs available for your credit cards, your mortgage, or insurance policies.
So, going into that, who's affected? So, many individuals affected during this period are federal employees. This includes government workers and even contractors. Many are typically put on furlough or required to work during this time without pay. Although there is a shutdown, these employees are typically reimbursed or receive back pay for the time that they had to work during the shutdown. So I have a few examples of individuals that were affected during this time. In the shutdown that occurred in 2018 under the Trump administration, this shutdown occurred because Congress couldn't agree on the funding for the 2019 fiscal year. Also during this time, Trump wanted to add financing for creating the U.S.-Mexican border wall. This shutdown lasted from December 22nd, 2019 to January 25th, 2019, lasting 35 days. This became a record. And this was the most extended government shutdown that had ever occurred within the last 4 decades. So, during this time, my boyfriend's mom at the time was a contractor for the National Forest Services. And with the government shutdown, this affected their family greatly. Not only because it was a regular family, but they were a family of 7. So at the time, my ex had to step in and provide for his family. He couldn't continue to save for his spring semester because he's attending the University of Texas A&M. This resulted in him having to drop out of the university for the semester. After all of this occurring, he actually ended up dropping from the university and had to attend the community college because he could no longer afford it. He had taken all his savings and put it into his family. This overall created problems and concerns in the household because there was an unknown of when that next payment would return. And I know that created a great deal of stress. Another example is my sorority sister. She is a contracted employee for the Air Force. She works in accounting, and within the last week, she had expressed to me how they were going to put her on furlough if they ran out of funding. For her, she said, it's stressful because how am I going to pay my rent? And when will I get my back pay? Or when am I going to get money? I need this money now, not later. I have bills I need to pay for, and this is a very difficult time for everyone. And being around her, I can tell that it's hard because this is a situation that can occur to thousands of people across the nation. She is very lucky to have one person in her life who's willing to help her, and that's her boyfriend, who stated that he's willing to help pick up the slack until she receives her payment. So, there's that. Another example is myself. I have been blessed with the assistance from the VA because of my father. He was in the military for 25 years, and through his service, he was injured severely. Through that, he's resulted in having 100% disability in the eyes of the VA. Because of this disability, I received Chapter 35 because I'm a child of a disabled veteran. So with that, currently I receive $1,400 a month to go to school. However, since this shutdown will occur, I will not be receiving that benefit until the shutdown is resolved. This personally stresses me out because right now I don't need to work as many hours. After all, this is extra income every month. However, I do need to worry about how will I pay my bills with the minimal amount that I make through my job. I have the privilege to focus on my grades and go to school, so I hope this shutdown doesn't last longer than needed. So this just kind of gives a little bit of an insight of who is affected. I know these 3 examples is very minimal to what everyone in the United States is probably dealing with, but it just gives a little bit of a perspective that there are different instances that each family and each individual has to worry about. Like my first example was my ex had to drop out of college and ended up going to the community college, which is not that big of a deal because you're still going to the university. However, it's the change of plans. Plans changed. With the second example, she is a contracted employee for the Air Force, and she's not sure what she's going to get her next payment, and she has bills she needs to pay. That's very stressful. And she doesn't know if she's going to be able to have assistance from someone else, but she's lucky she does. And then with me, as a college student, I rely on my VA benefit so I don't have to work as much. I have all these loans and bills that I need to pay, and this helps bring the stress down of not having to worry. And currently I'm a little stressed. So with that, what is the impact of the lockdowns?
An impact that would overflow into the equity markets if we were not able to see a deal. What would that look like?
If it's a short shutdown, I think the impact would be minor. But if this goes on for several weeks or, God forbid, even months, then I think it would be a headwind for the overall economy. And I would throw out one thing that would be an irritant for the Federal Reserve, which is data dependent. The Fed is not going to probably be able to get the unemployment report next Friday because the Bureau of Labor Statistics, which puts out that and also puts out the inflation report, will also be shut down. This is a great annoyance to the Fed as they try to set monetary policy.
So Greg, just to clarify that for everyone out there, that happens as soon as the government shutdowns, just in terms of the data that they will not have access for. I mean, when you talk about the length of this being so critical when we're trying to determine the impact for Americans on the economy, on the market, I guess, how long does the shutdown need to go before you get a little bit more concerned about the impact?
A week from today. If we don't have an unemployment report next Friday, that will be a sign of that's one of many things. There's perhaps more serious issues, money for food for women, infants, and children. There are a lot of programs that could start to run out of money. But in terms of the most visible one right away, it's going to be the economic data.
So, Bill, as you're continuing to kind of really cover everything that is surrounding this shutdown, the of course machinations of the however you want to classify what takes place inside the Beltway, and then all the way into the economic impact that later takes place. We were talking to Moody's earlier, and Mark Zandi telling us, of course, he's in a different part of Moody's than the credit rating side, but we could potentially see it to the U.S. credit rating. What would be the significance of that from your purview?
I mean, usually the people who are causing the shutdown back off when they see something really dangerous happening. But I want to emphasize Greg's point. I mean, these are real government programs that are going to stop, and whether they're helping women with little kids, or whether they're keeping national parks open, or allowing NIH to go about doing further research. They're real people that work for the government, and you can dump on bureaucrats all they want, but this is their job, and many of them work hard at it, and their families depend on it. And the attitude of just treating it as a cavalier thing that, we're going to show them, we're going to shut it down, I think by itself, that's very bad for the country. It sends a signal that the people who are one of the parties, at least, that's helping to govern this country is not serious about government. So, eventually the pressure mounts, and eventually presumably the Republicans we see. But again, I want to emphasize the asymmetric character. It's Biden. Sometimes presidents promote shutdowns. Clinton enjoyed the shutdown with Gingrich, and he really benefited from it politically. Biden, Democratic majority of the Senate, they have done nothing to promote this. They have passed the most plain vanilla continuing resolution in the Senate. Biden's endorsed it that would just keep things going for 45 days so they could work things out. So the rationale for opposing that, I think, is really, there is no real rationale except they want to shut down the government.
So basically, in summary, what I'm understanding is that
a government shutdown can have various economic consequences, including decreased government spending and uncertainty. This can affect societies in different ways, such as delays or disruptions in government programs and services, including Social Security and Medicare benefits. Additionally, government employees and contractors may be furloughed or forced to work without pay. which can impact their financial stability and overall well-being. The ripple effect of government shutdown can also be felt in the broader economy, as decreased government spending can lead to a decreased economic activity and growth. Ultimately, a government shutdown can have far-reaching consequences that can affect individuals, businesses, and overall economy. The major impact of government shutdown is the disruption to government services, which can have a significant impact on individuals who rely on these services. Some of these services can include the post office. So if you have something that you need to come in the mail, but the post office isn't working, what are we going to do? Or something simple as my parents love to travel the United States, and in November, they're going to go to see the the Grand Canyon, and they've been planning this trip for months. So imagine they get there and the park is closed. So it's just something simple like that. From there, also, additionally, the economic impact can decrease government spending, which can lead to decreased economic activity and growth, which can have a negative impact on businesses and individuals. I know back in 2018, 2019, when the first government shutdown occurred that I experienced, I know a lot of companies had a hard time staying open, such as small businesses. I do believe those who have already experienced government shutdowns in the past, there may be some fear of some unknown about what will happen in the future. And hopefully this shutdown does not last as long as the one in 2018, 2019 did. But I do have a clip here that I wanted to insert from the 2018 to 19 that I thought it was very important.
Federal government shutdown now entering its third week. Many people are wondering if it's impacting local businesses here in the heartland. Dan Hamlet of the Missouri Rural Enterprise and Innovation Center in Kirksville says local small businesses are not feeling as much of an impact as other parts of the country since there's no large federal presence or military base here. Businesses with government contracts and loans through federal government agencies have been affected.
The VA, USDA, Small Business Association, those lines are all on hearings while those key staff are furloughed. But local banks are still lending. They're just doing their non-government lending lines, and the government lending portion is on hold right now.
So moving forward, what is the solution Congress is trying to resolve? Taking a deep dive into what is a government shutdown only proves that this only occurs when we cannot decide on where we want to spend our money. I know money is the biggest concern with any relationship we have, between your friendships, between relationships, between your daily personal. So imagine a whole country trying to figure out where to put that funding. So the main solution Congress is trying to resolve here is just to determine where are we going to spend our money. And I don't think that's not going to be a solution that you can solve overnight, making sense why they would do a shutdown. And lastly, when can we prevent this, or do we see this happening again in the future? So looking back into, as we stated earlier in this episode, is that this is the 14th time our country has gone into a shutdown. So realistically speaking, I cannot personally have confidence to say that this will never happen again. I personally remember the 2018 to 2019 one because it was such a weird time. It was right before Christmas, after the new year. It was just weird. I was just waiting for everything to come through, when I was going to get my FAFSA. All of this stuff was put into perspective. And with that, I hope you enjoyed my episode. I found this. And with that, I hope you enjoyed my episode. And with that, I hope you enjoyed this episode on Silent Thoughts. I found talking about our government shutdown to be a very interesting conversation. And I do think it's controversial because not a lot of people in our age frame are familiar with how our Congress works and what is expected from us. So I hope you learned a little bit. I know I learned a little bit in the process of it. With that, I'm going to go ahead and close off. My name is Abby Van Aken, your host to Silent Thoughts. And if you enjoyed this episode, please stay tuned for next week, where I will be finding a new topic that we can talk about. I will be posting them on my social media platforms. So let me know from my topics that I'm going to post out there what you want me to talk about. Until then, see you next week. There